So hello and very good afternoon. So we were discussing the aquatic biome, and we have seen the different types, the freshwater biomes, the saline water biomes, or the marine biomes. We also seen different types of freshwater biome, that is the static and floating type, or moving type, sorry. So now we are moving on to plant adaptation. So we'll be discussing plant and animal adaptations and threats. That is the last area that is left in the biomes. So in the later part, we will start plant or ecological succession. So in the later part, we'll start ecological succession. Okay. So let us quickly go through it. So what are the different plant adaptations in the aquatic biome? So obviously, when the plants are either submerged or they are floating, obviously they have to carry on the photosynthesis. So plants, including the algae, they have to carry on photosynthesis. For that, they have to remain near the water surface so that the light can penetrate and they can carry on the photosynthesis. Okay, so to remain afloat or to remain near the surface of the water, they have certain adaptations to keep themselves floating. Okay, so what are these? So most oceanic plants, they have adapted to their environment by developing gas sacs. So these gas sacs, so these are small, you can see these berries. Okay, you can see these small sac like structures or the berry like structure, grapes ki tarah hai. So they are also called as grapes, sea grapes. Okay, because they look like grapes. They are also called as sea grapes because their similarity, because of their similarity. So they develop these gas sacs. So they have air sacs. Air is present inside them. Obviously, when the air is present, they will be buoyant. Buoyancy will be there, so they will keep the plant floating. Okay. So they have gas sacs and air sacs to lift their photosynthetic surfaces towards the surface of the water to collect enough sunlight. Okay, if they are deep in the water, sunlight will not be able to penetrate, so they have to keep themselves afloat near the surface. So if they are near the coastal area, so if they are near the shore, so up to 200 meters sunlight can easily penetrate, right? If they are near the coast where the water is not very deep, so there, even though they are at the bottom, so suppose this is the ocean, right, like this, as you go deeper the depth will increase. So if they are here nearby up to here, so suppose say 200 meters, up to 200 meters sunlight can easily penetrate. So even if they are at the benthic or even they are benthic plants or at the bottom of the ocean near the coast, the depth of the water will not be that much. Sunlight can easily penetrate and they can carry on photosynthesis even if they are anchored to the soil deep in the water, but not very deep. Sunlight can easily penetrate. But beyond 200 meters, if these plants are in the deep ocean, so here, if the plants are at the bottom, sunlight will not be able to reach, they will not be able to carry out photosynthesis and they will die. So these floating plants, they have to keep them floating near the surface. So these plants which are living in deep water, they have to keep themselves floating in the deep ocean water. So with the help of these gas sacs, they will float, they will remain afloat, buoyancy. Okay, so examples of this adaptation include sargasso seaweed. So sargasso seaweed, it is in the, you can say, northern Atlantic Ocean. You can see this big mass of sargasso weed. Okay, so in Atlantic Ocean there is a large area where you will see these weeds floating in the water. Okay, so they are also called as sea grapes because of the resemblance to the grapes of these air sacs. So to keep them floating, simple enough, easy. Sargasso sea भी बोलते हैं. So mid Atlantic Ocean, so in the northern Atlantic Ocean, in the middle part. Okay, so you have Sargasso Sea. Sargasso Sea, it is called Sargasso Sea because of the weed present in there. So this is the floating adaptation. Now, ocean plants, no, on the ocean plants, the root structure is called as hold fast. The root like structure is called as hold fast. It is meant to anchor the plants against the currents. Okay, so these are rooted, these plants are at the bottom, so they can anchor to the base. So for root like structures, so these root like structures are called as hold fast, so that they can anchor to the base inside the ocean, so they can anchor to the bottom. So they have these gas sacs, gas bladders, and also hold fast organs. So most oceanic plants, they are more properly termed as seaweed or algae. Basically, they are algae, macroscopic algae. They are macroscopic algae. So you might have seen in the Korean dramas. So they, on the birthdays, they eat seaweed, seaweed soup. You might have seen. So that is the essential part. On birthdays, they definitely eat seaweed soup. और वो आई डोंट रिमेम्बर, वो राइस, एक बहुत ड्रामास में ना ऐसे ट्रायंगुलर टाइप का राइस का एक होता है, उसको चारों तरफ they also use it as a wrapper. So this seaweed, it is processed, it is sold as a dry paper like sheets. So basically these are algae. Okay, even your agar agar, so the medium which is used for solidifying in the laboratories, microbiology lab, so agar agar, it also comes from seaweed. So these are all macroscopic algae. Basically when we say sea plants, these are algae. Okay, now ocean plants must be able to handle the salinity also. So ocean water has salinity of around 3.5%. If you want to convert percentage to ppm, right, पार्ट्स पर मिलियन है ना, परसेंटेज से पीपीएम में कन्वर्ट करना है या पीपीएम से परसेंटेज में कन्वर्ट करना है, तो एक चीज याद रखना, 1% इज इक्वल टू 10,000 ppm. एंड नाउ यू कैन कन्वर्ट, अगर इसको 3.5 है तो यू मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 10,000, सो इट विल कम अराउंड 35,000 ppm, है ना. पार्ट्स पर मिलियन, मिलियन में कितने जीरो होते हैं, 6 होते हैं. सो परसेंटेज से पीपीएम में अगर कन्वर्ट करना है तो 2 जीरो और ऐड कर दो ना. परसेंट मींस 100, पार्ट ऑफ 100, राइट. सो यू ऐड 2 जीरो, सो इट विल बिकम 1 मिलियन. 1% इज इक्वल टू 10,000 ppm. सो ओशन का जो सॉल्ट कॉन्सेंट्रेशन है, इट इज अराउंड 3.5, उससे थोड़ा सा ज्यादा ही है, 3.7 समथिंग, somewhere around that. Right? So ocean plants must be able to handle the dissolved salt in the water also. They also need to adapt to grow in high salt concentration. Okay. Now, so they have adapted certain mechanisms. So the adaptation mechanisms range from living in comparatively low salinity region. So they either they live in low saline conditions where the salinity is low, brackish. So you see where the river water meets the ocean water. Okay, so near the delta region. So brackish water जहाँ पर होता है, जहाँ पर salt का water salt concentration कम है, but the salt concentration is bit low. There they can grow, or they adapt in a certain way that even though they absorb more salt, they have some mechanism to break the salt without harming itself. So, or other complex mechanism that breaks down the salt slowly into chlorine and sodium ions. So most predominant salt in the ocean water is sodium chloride. Other salts are also there, sulfates, nitrates. Chloride is dominant salts, जो है chloride है, sodium chloride, magnesium chloride, potassium chloride. So in some way they remove the excess salt. They break down the salt into constituents, sodium and chloride ions, and they remove it from their body. So some type of mechanism in different plants they have developed. So now ये तो एक है, this is one mechanism. This is example of plants which have adapted to marine conditions, right? Deep sea water, they have gas sacs, and they have certain mechanism to regulate the salt also. Now, spongy tissue in the stem and leaves to keep them floating. Now, this is called as aerenchyma, right? Spongy tissue helps the plant to move the oxygen air down to the root. So those plants that are submerged or partly submerged. So part of plant is above the water, part of plant is below the water. For example, in case of rice, paddy हम लोग जब grow करते हैं ना submerged conditions में, lowland paddy cultivation where we maintain submerged conditions and we grow the paddy in standing water. So roots directly they cannot absorb. There is no oxygen because all the pores are filled with water. Soil pores are filled with water. It is submerged. So it will take oxygen from the aerial parts and it will supply it to the roots. So aquatic plants have this kind of adaptation. So they have spongy tissue in the stems and leaves that can transport the oxygen or move the oxygen to the roots. In some plants, they have floating horizontal leaves. So these leaves will be floating on the surface of the water. So horizontal leaves that float on the surface of the water expose as much of the leaf surface as possible to the sun to carry on photosynthesis. So you might have seen in case of lotus, नीलंबो के केस में देखा होगा, लीफ सरफेस के ऊपर, वाटर सरफेस के ऊपर फ्लैट ऐसे होता है. It will be present on the water surface. So it will be horizontal. It will be spread on the water surface and exposed to sun. So water reflects light. So leaves under water gets less light than the leaves on the surface. So जितना बड़ा leaf का surface होगा, so that is why in most cases in aquatic plants you see larger leaf surface so that they can capture as much light as possible. So ज़्यादा surface area होगा तो ज़्यादा light को capture कर पाएगा. So in most of the aquatic plants, the leaf surface area is larger to capture more sunlight, because if they are submerged plants, suppose the plant is submerged, light will enter into the water and then reach the leaf surface. Right. But part of the light will be reflected back by the water. Only some amount of it will be transmitted. So to absorb as much as possible, they will have larger surface area. Then we have emergent leaves. So leaves underwater get less light than the leaves on the surface. So emergent leaves, so the leaves which are on the water surface, on the surface of the water, like in the case of lotus, they rest on the top of the water. This helps them to capture maximum light. Animals का क्या adaptation है? So in case of plants, either the adaptation is to keep them floating or to supply the oxygen or to capture to have larger surface area to capture more sunlight. So these are adaptations. Or if it is in case of marine plants, they also require adaptation to break down the salt to avoid the toxicity. Now what about animals? Okay, so fish, it can drink salt water and eliminate the salt through gills. So animals also have mechanism to survive in marine conditions. They can regulate the salt concentration. Seabirds, so the birds that feed on seafood, so they fish, they drink the water, they fish in the ocean. So seabirds also drink salt water, and the excess salt is eliminated via nasal or salt glands into the nasal cavity, and they will shake it away. So salt crystals will be formed and they will shake it away, the crystals will fall off. So they eliminate excess salt. So they have some mechanism to regulate the salt concentration. So whales can drink salt water, but they get most water from the organisms they eat. They also drink salt water. They also have some kind of mechanism to regulate the salt concentration, but majority of the water that they get is from the animals they eat, not directly the water they drink. So fish and other organisms, they live underwater. They can take oxygen from the water either through gills or through their skin. So gills have very thin blood capillaries. So oxygen can easily diffuse through these blood capillaries. Okay. So oxygen intake will be happening in the gills. So marine animals, they need to come to the water surface to breathe. Mammals basically. So in case of dolphins, in case of your whale, these are mammals. They need to breathe. They have lungs, so they have to come to the surface after some time. They will inhale and they will again dive deep. They will come back again for exhaling and taking in more oxygen. So which is why deep diving whales, they have blowholes. So you might have seen on the top of their, so if you have this kind of, so on the surface they have a blowhole. So from here they will throw out the water. So they can surface, they come to the surface to breathe after some time. So after every 40 minutes or 1 hour, they will come out and they will breathe and they will again dive deeper. So whales can stay underwater without breathing for an hour or more because they make very efficient use of the lungs. So they exchange up to 90% of the lung volume with each breath. They can store oxygen in the blood and muscles while diving. So once in a while they will come out and they will breathe and they will again dive deeper. The oceans. So when they are going deep, pressure will be high. Water column is, I mean, it is very deep water column. So the pressure in the deep waters, the water pressure will be very high. It will easily crush your eardrums, right? So the animals which dive deeper, they might have some kind of adaptation to this also, right? So majority of the animals, they will be near the surface. Only few can go deeper. So ocean in the water pressure in the ocean increases 15 pounds per square inch for every 33 feet of water. So as you go 33 feet, pressure increases by 15 pounds per square inch. Okay. So most of the animals do not change the water depth. They will remain at the same depth. Okay. But some organisms, they can dive deeper. So whales, sea turtles, seals, they can go deeper and they can come back to the surface. So they should have some kind of mechanism to overcome the pressure of the deep water. So deep water will be exerting more pressure. So as you go deeper, there will be a lot of pressure on the body. It will crush. So even submarines, they cannot go beyond a certain depth. Otherwise, the pressure will be so high, water column, the pressure exerted by the water column will be so high, it will crush the body of the vessel or your submarine. So they can also go up to certain depth, 500 meters, or most modern ones, they can go up to 800 meters or 1000 meters, not more than that. If they go more deeper, it will crush the body. So they have to modify the uh, vessel. The submarine has to be modified to handle higher pressure. Most of the submarines, they can go up to 500 meters or maximum 700, 800 meters. Beyond that, the pressure is very high. So what about whale? So in case of whales, they have certain adaptation to withstand this deep diving. ये deep diving को जब ज्यादा डेप्थ में जाता है तो प्रेशर ज्यादा हो जाता है. So to handle this pressure, they have certain adaptations. So for example, in case of sperm whale, it is able to dive over 1.5 miles below the ocean surface. So it can go up to depth of 1.5 miles. One adaptation is that to handle this kind of pressure, lungs and rib cage collapse while diving to deeper depths. So because of the pressure, so it has collapsible rib cage and lungs. So it can collapse the lower part of the lung. Okay, collapsible rib cage and lungs are present. So lower part, जो पीछे वाला part है, this part, it can collapse the hind part of the lungs, but it will have enough oxygen to come back again. Okay, so it has collapsible rib cage and lungs. So to handle the high pressure, it can collapse its rib cage and lungs, lower part of the lungs especially. So leatherback sea turtle, they can dive up to 3,000 feet. They also have collapsible lungs and flexible shell to handle the pressure. So only certain animals they can handle these high pressure. They can dive deeper. Most of the animals, they remain in the same level. So they don't go very shallow. They don't go very deep. So they remain at the same depth. Most of the animals. Some they can change the depth. So like whales and turtles, they can go very deep and they can come back also. So animals in the intertidal zone. So intertidal zone is the area between the high tide line and low tide line. Low tide and high tide. High tide में क्या है? The water will move towards the land. Low tide में the water will recede. So between these high tide line and low tide line, you have intertidal zone. So what about the plants or animals living in this intertidal zone? So animals in the intertidal zone do not have to deal with high water pressure because they are near the coast, very almost on the land, but they need to withstand high pressure of the wind and waves. The water will be moving faster, so they have to withstand this kind of stress. They don't have to deal with high pressure because they are in the shallow water, almost on the surface. So in the low tide time, they will be exposed, they will be on the land. In the high tide, they will be submerged underwater. So they have to withstand this submergence or the movement or tides. Many marine invertebrates and plants in this habitat have the ability to cling to the rocks or other substances so that they will not be washed away and have hard shells for protection. So water, when it is moving back during the high tide, the water will submerge the land. So they should be able to hold to the surface. Otherwise, the water will take them near the land. In the low tide, they will again go back to the ocean. So they have to withstand this movement of water. So they have to hold to the rock surface. So they need some kind of anchorage. They have to dig in and anchor themselves so that they will not move easily by the movement of water or the wind. So organisms that are living very deep in the ocean water. So organisms that need light, such as tropical coral reef and their associated algae. So in case of corals, they require shallow water, ambient temperature. So corals, they are associated with zooxanthellae, right? So these are corals are anthozoans. So these are animals which have an association, mutualistic association with the algae. So these algae require sunlight. So that is why corals, they cannot survive under deep water because sunlight will not be able to penetrate. So they live in the shallow waters near the equators where the temperature is also ambient. Okay, so that is the corals. Now what about those animals which are living very deep in the ocean water where there is no light? Okay, so in the depths of ocean, abyssal yani or depth deep water mein, some fish have lost their eyes or pigmentation because light नहीं आता है तो देखने की क्या जरूरत है. So the eyes have degenerated. There is no need for eyes because anyhow there is no light. So to perceive the light you require eyes. So there is no light, so no need for eyes, and the eyes have degenerated. Okay, because eyes are not necessary, there is no light. So some other organisms, they are bioluminescent, they produce light. Okay, so either they have their own source or they are in association with some bacteria which are bioluminescent. So these bacteria, they produce the light, or the organism itself has this mechanism. So they have a molecule called as luciferin. Okay, it produces light, blue. kind of light, luciferin. So enzyme luciferase acts on this molecule to produce light. तो याद रखना है molecule luciferin. So some they have this bioluminescent molecule which will produce light when luciferase enzyme act on it. Other organisms they have an association with the bacteria that are bioluminescent. Now this light, this is either to scare away the predator. So these animals that produce light, they can be prey. So other animals can come and eat. So these they produce the light to startle the predator or to attract the prey. They also are dependent upon other animals. So they also have to feed. So they attract other animals by this light. So other smaller animals they will come near by this fish attracted by the light, and this fish will catch it up. So to attract the prey or to startle or avoid the predator or to attract for attracting the opposite sex for mating, it can be used for mating also. So this bioluminescent light has many purposes. Importance क्या है aquatic biome का? So they are vital for the health of the planet because most of the photosynthesis is carried out by the marine biome, right? So oceans with their fish, weeds, invertebrates and mammals, as well as the world's rivers, lakes, streams, they are important for biodiversity. They're all important biodiversity reservoirs. So it regulates the planet's temperature, है ना? So carbon का सबसे important sink क्या है? Ocean water. Ocean water is the largest sink of carbon. It removes the carbon from the atmosphere due to photosynthesis of the phytoplankton. Okay. So aquatic biomes, they recycle the nutrients, purify the water, increase, again, you can just go through it, right? So they are important. Aquatic biome, when I say both freshwater and marine, okay, marine biomes, they are source of food, okay, they are important reservoirs or biodiversity and all that. Freshwater, we are directly dependent upon freshwater biomes, okay, for food or for drinking water purpose. Threats क्या है? Pollution is one of the important threat. Pollution from different sources, point and non-point sources, ultimately they will go into the streams and dumped into the oceans. अभी तो microplastic का बहुत बड़ा issue है. So again, then there is oil leakage, deep sea drilling. Okay, so oil exploration में या फिर the tankers they might have accidents and oil may spill. So various sources of pollution. Okay, this can harm the biome. Then habitat loss and degradation. So aquatic habitats, including the wetlands, rivers, lakes, coral reefs, are being lost or degraded due to deforestation or due to sedimentation or due to thermal pollution. All those things are there. Coral bleaching is a good example of thermal pollution, where because of high temperature, this algal and animal association, it breaks, so that will lead to bleaching. Overfishing and unsustainable harvesting. So overfishing may also disrupt. So whatever you do, harvesting from the ocean should be in sustainable manner. If you go for overfishing, then again, artificial islands, they also are, harming the ecosystem because they are damaging to the coral reefs. Invasive species, they can also affect the freshwater ecosystems. Then climate change, obviously, climate change is a significant threat to aquatic ecosystems. So rising temperature, altered precipitation patterns, sea level rise, ocean acidification, all these are affecting the biodiversity. Then again, water extraction and damming. So you are stopping the flow of water and excessive use of surface water. This can also for transportation. For one of the, you can take one of the example, that is your Gangetic dolphin. So it is affected by that inland transportation. Inland waterways में जो transportation है, they get caught in the trawlers and all, and they are killed. So you can give an example of uh, give an example that the Gangetic dolphins, they are killed by the transportation, inland waterway transportation. So side effects तो हैं obviously. So excess water extraction, agriculture, industry, domestic use, construction of dams. You are changing the flow of water by construction of dams, so it can affect the downstream fishing and ecosystems. So lack of awareness and conservation efforts. So this is a very common point. So you can just go through it. So now we have completed the biomes. So I guess we have comprehensively covered the biomes part. So ecosystems. Biomes are nothing but ecosystem, but on a larger scale. So now you have an idea, okay, in what kind of biomes animals or plants have such adaptations. So if they say these are the type of adaptations, so in which biome do you see this kind of adaptation? So you will be able to guess. Now you have an idea, broader idea, what type of adaptations animals and plants have to different biomes. So that is the interaction basically. Biotic and abiotic factors are interacting with each other. In the definition of ecosystem, we see this part, right? Biotic and abiotic factors, they interact with each other. So this is the interaction part, the adaptations. Okay, so every biome has different abiotic factors, and animals and plants, they adapt to survive in those conditions. So that is the interaction part. Biotic, so food chain, ye wala sab biotic. Within bio, I mean, you are within the biotic factors, the interaction, the food chains, all of those, the food web, the pyramids. So that is within the biotic system. And biotic and abiotic are interacting, so you have to learn about the adaptations. So are you satisfied with this particular biomes topic? So I have taken time. I do not want to rush, because in most cases this part, it is not covered thoroughly. Yes, ये biome है, ये temperature ऐसे ऐसे होता है, and they will just move on. But you need to know the adaptations. At least you should know some examples, because in the exam directly examples can be given. So this is an animal, and this kind of adaptation is seen in which animal. So such questions have appeared in the examination earlier. So you need to have a thorough knowledge about these plant and animal adaptations. So let us move on to a new topic, that is ecological succession. Okay. All right. So let us, in simple words, first understand what is this term, what is the meaning of this term, and what are you going to learn. Okay. So ecological succession in simple terms is the rebuilding, you can say, the rebuilding of an ecosystem that has been damaged, or the ecosystem, the building of an ecosystem from the beginning. Okay, so it is the process of building an ecosystem or rebuilding an ecosystem after some natural calamity or disaster. So basically, in the ecosystem, one species will replace another species over a period of time. So you can see the change in the species composition. So for example, now in this ecosystem, so suppose, say, initially there was a first, you can say, the initial species which has occupied this area. We give certain terminology, we use certain terms for those species, but let us say, let us understand in layman's terms first. So there is a species A which has occupied a area Now this species will be interacting with the abiotic factors. So this is living species, so it will be interacting with the abiotic factors. It will be extracting nutrients from the environment. It will survive and it will multiply. So slowly it will multiply, its population will increase. And as it is interacting with the environment will also slowly change, because this species is, the species A is surviving in an area, it is constantly interacting with the abiotic factors. The animal or the plant, whatever it is, it will also excrete, it will shed the leaves, it will add organic matter, it will change the soil composition. Slowly it will also bring changes to the environment where it is living. This species will also have an effect on the environment. So you are living in a particular area, for example humans, so you also consume water, so you are taking up the nutrients or you are taking up the resources from the area. तुम plants को harvest कर रहे हो, agriculture कर रहे हो, you are taking the groundwater, so you are taking the resources, and you are also producing waste, you are also producing sewage, है ना, you are also producing plant waste. So whatever, after cooking, whatever garbage you have, you are throwing it out. So you are also in a way affecting the environment. You are taking the resources from the environment, or you are also producing certain waste which is dumped back into the environment. So environment is also affected because of the species, right? So this interaction is two way. You are also taking resources from the environment and you are also giving back. It can be positive or negative. So you are dumping गार्बेज, सो पोल्यूट भी कर सकते हो या फिर सस्टेनेबल वे में भी सर्वाइव कर सकते हो, बट ऑब्वियसली यू ऑल्सो आर अफेक्टिंग द एनवायरमेंट. सो द स्पीशीज also has an effect on the composition, or it also has an effect on the abiotic factors. So the plant species that is living, it is also adding organic matter. So soil का composition change हो रहा है, soil का structure में changes आ रहे हैं. The plants may also produce certain acids, or it is releasing carbon dioxide which is dissolving in water, and carbonic acid is producing. Carbonic acid will again enhance the process of weathering of the rocks. So plant is also affecting the abiotic factors, like soil, for example. Soil composition is also changing with time as the plants are growing there. So what will happen after a certain time, the conditions, the abiotic factors or the environment is constantly changing because of the species A, and with time it changes to certain extent, such an extent that it is no longer amicable, or it is no longer congenial for species A. So another species will take up this environment. So species composition has changed. Earlier there was species A, now another species will come here which is favorable for, which can survive in these conditions. The conditions are becoming more and more favorable for B species. A species शुरू में था, but as the A species continue to live in that environment, it is also interacting, and it has changed the environment to such an extent that it is no longer favorable for A, it is favorable for B species. So B species will remain in this environment for certain period of time. It will also have its effect, it will also add certain things to the environment, it will also change the abiotic factors. Now it is no longer favorable for B, so species C will take place. This will happen, so there are series of steps, and ultimately you will see, you will have a climax species. So this is in equilibrium with the environment. This species is in equilibrium with the environment. So this process of change in the species composition, so this change from your pioneer species, पायोनियर माने स्टार्टिंग जो करता है, जो शुरू करता है, पायोनियर स्पीशीज से लेकर क्लाइमैक्स स्पीशीज जो लास्ट अल्टीमेट स्पीशीज है, जो इक्विलिब्रियम में है एनवायरनमेंट के साथ. सो टू मूव थ्रू all these stages, or to carry on all these stages, it takes considerable period of time. So it is the process of rebuilding of an ecosystem, where the species composition will change over a period of time, and it will happen in a series of steps, and ultimately you will have a climax species which is in equilibrium with the environment. कुछ समझ में आया? थोड़ा बहुत ऊपर ऊपर एटलीस्ट. देखो तुमको ना ब्रॉड कॉन्सेप्ट समझ में आना चाहिए. Rest of the theory will anyhow cover it, but you should at least somebody asks you what is ecological succession, so you should be able to explain it in a bit, simple words, right? So species composition changes as the ecosystem rebuilds, so the factors become unfavorable for the earlier species and another species will take over that area. So in this way it will happen in steps, and ultimately a species will occupy the area which is in equilibrium with the abiotic conditions. So that is called as climax species. Okay, so let us see what is ecological succession. So if you read, if you go through the terminology, then it will be more clearer to you. Okay, so in layman's terms we have understood what is that. Now we will go through the technical terms or the technical terminology. So ecological succession is the process of change in the species structure. See, there was earlier a species A. After some time, species A will be replaced by species B. Then after some time, B will be replaced by species C. And at the end, you will have a climax species, mature species, which is in equilibrium with the ecosystem. So there will not be further change. So ecological succession is the process of change in the species structure. So species composition will change in an ecological community over a period of time. So this building up of community will take time. ऐसा नहीं है कि it will happen in 1 or 2 years. No, it may take 50 years or 100 years or even more than that also. So it is a process by which an ecological community undergoes more or less orderly and predictable changes following a disturbance or initial colonization of new habitat. So यहाँ पर दो चीजें हैं. You have to see here, two things are there. So orderly and predictable changes, you have to focus on these terms. So there is an orderly change and predictable change. So this happens in an order and predictable changes will happen. Now this can happen when your pioneer species occupies a new area. So दो टाइप का succession है. Primary, where everything will start from the beginning, and secondary succession, where there was a plant community, there was a mature community earlier, but due to some ecological disaster like forest fire or volcanic eruption, that community has been completely destroyed. Now there was earlier a community, but it was destroyed due to natural or artificial causes like forest fire or volcanic eruption or some natural calamity, and the community has been wiped out. Now after that calamity, if again succession begins, that is called as secondary succession. Okay, primary succession is, it is happening from the beginning. There was no community there, there was no initial community was there. So there was volcanic eruption and lava came out and rocks are formed. Now this bare rock, it does not have any community. So अगर ऐसे bare rock के ऊपर community शुरू होता है, so if the process begins from this bare rock, the rocks will undergo weathering and soil will form, and slowly the lichens, bryophytes and herb shrubs, and at last you will have climax community. So if the process or the progression happens from a bare land, there was no community here, now such type of succession is called as primary succession. Okay, but if there was already a community but it was destroyed due to forest fire, and again the succession begins, obviously after the forest fire has been extinguished, again the plant community will take over. So the succession that happens after the disturbance is called as secondary succession. So you remember these two things, primary and secondary succession. Okay. Uh, Secondary succession will start. There was, prior to the disturbance, there was a plant community, there was animal communities, so there was an ecosystem, it was destroyed, and after that again succession begins. That is called a secondary succession. There was no community here. This is bare rock that has been exposed. So either due to tectonic activity, okay, so these rocks are exposed now and these rocks are undergoing weathering, and from the beginning there was no plant community here. It is the initial stages. So from the weathering of the rocks, the lichens will grow and slowly a community will begin. So that is primary succession. There was no community there earlier. It is bare rock. That is primary. From the start, no community earlier. It is called as primary succession. Lichens can be seen growing in different type of forest. So you can see lichens in evergreen forest also. You have seen lichens growing in tundra region also. Okay, so lichens are found in all type of environment. It should not be polluted. So lichens cannot be seen in polluted environments. Except polluted environments, you will see lichen everywhere. Decomposing wood के ऊपर तुमको lichen मिल जाएगा, forest में मिल जाता है lichens. You will need, they are very sensitive plants. They are indicator species, right? They are indicator of health of environment. So if pollution is there, you will not see lichens. Yeah, obviously it is polluted. Especially they are very sensitive to air pollution. You won't see them in the cities. You have to go to the rural area or where forest is there. In the forest, you will see them. They are found in all kind of terrestrial biomes. Okay, so succession describes the sequential appearance and disappearance of a species in a community over a time. You see, first species was replaced by a pioneer species, was replaced by another species B, it was replaced by another species C, and last May you have a climax species. So one species is replaced by another species, and sequential appearance and disappearance of species in a community over a period of time. So it will take a long period of time. So first A species will appear, it will disappear, and the area will be taken over by B species. It will be succeeded by C species. So तभी इसको succession बोलते हैं. So sequentially they are replaced. One species is replaced by another species. The time scale can be decades. Okay, so it can take 20-30 years after wildfire, or even millions of years after a mass extinction. So अगर localized area में कुछ natural calamity forest fire आया है तो after 15-20 years slowly you can see again vegetation will grow and it will become normal. But after a mass extinction it may take 10 million years, 15 million years to again have the same biodiversity. It may take millions of years for the animals to adopt and diversify. So adaptive radiation may take around millions of years, 10 to 15 million years. The process by which, again we are describing the succession. हम लोग succession को अलग अलग तरह से describe कर रहे हैं. The process by which a mix of species and environment in a given area changes over a period of time is known as succession. So species composition is also changing, environment is also changing, because species also has effect on the environment. So ये जो A species था, it is having effect on environment also. Environment is also having effect on A. So slowly the environment is also changing, which becomes very difficult for A to survive. So the environment has changed to certain extent that A cannot survive in that environment, it will be taken over by another species for which the environment is very congenial. Then B will also influence the environment. After some time, the environment has been modified to such an extent that survival of B will be difficult. So another species for which the environment is congenial, it will take over. So in this way, the composition will change over a period of time. Ultimately, there will be a mature, you can say, community which will take over the area. So these communities, they gradually supplant one another until a climax community emerges, such as a mature forest. So this is an example of your climax community. Or again, until a disruption will happen. So हो सकता है जैसे स्पीशीज एक के बाद एक रिप्लेस हो रहा हो, बीच में फॉरेस्ट फायर हो जाए. So when the succession is in the middle stage, so when your shrubs and herbs are there, again forest fire can happen, again it will start from the beginning, right? So until a climax community will take over, or in the middle also it can be disrupted again by forest fire. So again the succession will start from the beginning after the disruption. So succession may be initiated either by formation of new unoccupied habitat, such as from lava flow or severe landslide, or from some disturbance of a community, such as after the fire or wind damage or logging, right? So it can happen from the beginning or after certain disturbance. So succession that begins in new habitats, yani bare rock, there is no soil there to start from. So this just there is a rock. So वहां पर अगर शुरू हो रहा है, it is from the beginning, then it is called as primary succession. So there are no pre-existing communities there, only a rock is there. So nothing can survive on the bare rock. There are no nutrients, there is no soil. So if there is no pre-existing community, just a bare rock which will undergo weathering and slowly the soil will form. If it happens from that particular stage, then it is called as primary succession. But if there was a community earlier and there was some disturbance like forest fire and all the trees have been burnt, some might survive, or the seeds which are inside the soil, they may survive, they may germinate afterwards, and slowly again they will overtake the area, they will occupy the community. So there was a community earlier, but it was destroyed due to some natural calamity or forest fire or something. Again they will reoccupy. So in such case we call it secondary succession. Okay, now you understand what is primary and secondary succession. Okay, so let us see the general process, overall process. Okay, so for organisms to colonize some area, okay, so they have to adapt to abiotic conditions. So if I want to go and survive and flourish, I should be able to adapt to the new area, right? Okay, so the biotic organism, they have to adapt to the abiotic conditions to take over that area. So they have to adapt to those conditions in the new area. So this species which initiates the succession process, the organism or the species which initiates this process, is called as pioneer species. So this species occupies the area first. It is the first species to occupy an area. उसको हम लोग बोलते हैं pioneer species. Right. So example of which is lichen. Example of pioneer species is a lichen. So lichen is a mutualistic association between algae and fungus. So this is obligate mutualism. They cannot survive without each other. So fungus and algae का mutualist association है, ठीक है. So which survives on bare rocks and breaks it down to produce soil on its surface over time. Now these lichens, they produce organic acids. So these organic acids, they help in chemical weathering of rocks. So देखो, basically because biological organism is involved, we do not directly say it as chemical weathering, but it is biological weathering क्योंकि biological organism involved है. But this biological organism produces certain acids, इसलिए क्योंकि देखो है तो ऑर्गेनिक एसिड्स, बट बायोलॉजिकल ऑर्गेनिज्म प्रोड्यूस कर रहा है, इसलिए इसको बायोलॉजिकल वेदरिंग बोलेंगे. स्ट्रिक्ट सेंस में केमिकल वेदरिंग नहीं है, बायोलॉजिकल वेदरिंग. बट द लाइचेंस, दे प्रोड्यूस ऑर्गेनिक एसिड्स विच हेल्प इन वेदरिंग ऑफ रॉक्स. ओके, सो ऑर्गेनिक एसिड्स है, दे आर नॉट लाइक योर इनऑर्गेनिक स्ट्रॉन्ग एसिड, सल्फ्यूरिक, नाइट्रिक एसिड जैसा नहीं है, लेकिन ऑर्गेनिक एसिड्स भी तो एसिडिक ही है. दे माइट हैव अ बिट हायर पीएच. पीएच तुम्हारा शायद से 4.5 या 5 हो सकता है या 4 हो सकता है. दे आर नॉट लाइक स्ट्रॉन्ग एसिड्स, बट स्टिल दे आर एसिड्स. सो द मिनरल्स, दे रिएक्ट रेडिली विद दीज एसिड्स, नॉट लाइक वाटर. वाटर भी डिसॉल्व करता है, वाटर भी वेदरिंग में हेल्प करता है, केमिकल वेदरिंग में, बट they are more reactive than water. So lichens, they produce these organic acids which ultimately help in breakdown of the rocks, and weathering process से तुम्हारा soil form होना शुरू होता है. It helps in formation of soil. So lichens can do this because they can break down the minerals from which the rock is made. Now when these minerals are released, now these minerals are available for the organisms. तो वहां पे जो भी algae ग्रो हो रहा है या फिर तुम्हारा जो भी फर्दर फ्यूचर में प्लांट्स आएंगे, उनके लिए मिनरल्स रिलीज होते हैं. Now these minerals which were unavailable earlier in the rocks, now they are broken down and released into the environment. Now algae or the lichen can take over the minerals. They can take the minerals, they can absorb the minerals from the rock. So pioneer species, they modify the habitat over time and makes condition less severe, which allows other species to colonize. So they are modifying the environment so that other species can come and colonize it. Okay, now the other species which come and colonize, they outcompete the pioneer species. So ये जो है, ये species तुम्हारा lichen जो है, ये environment को change कर रहा है, so that it makes the environment more amicable or more comfortable for another species B to come and occupy this area. Now once B comes in, it outcompetes A. ये A से ज्यादा nutrients को लेने लगता है, A को outcompete कर देता है, and slowly A will disappear. So it will outcompete A and A will disappear and B will take over. So as new species colonize the area, they continue to change the conditions. फिर अब B जो है वो ऑर्गेनिक मैटर ऐड करेगा, सॉइल को चेंज करेगा, सॉइल कंडीशंस को चेंज करेगा धीरे धीरे. इट विल आल्सो चेंज द एनवायरनमेंट. बी विल आल्सो चेंज द एनवायरनमेंट and it will allow another species C to take over. C will outcompete B and B will be eliminated, or for some time B and C will grow together, but ultimately B will be replaced because C will outgrow it. C will outcompete it. For some time they may coexist, but they are competing for the same resources. C will be eliminated and B will be eliminated and C will overtake the area. Now you are getting it, right? कैसे वो composition change होता है. Right? So as changing abiotic factors become less extreme, so earlier the abiotic factors were very extreme. सिर्फ पत्थर था वहां पर, there was no soil, only rock was there. So that rock was broken down by weathering process and slowly soil and organic matter started to add. जो rocks के बीच में crevices है वहां पर थोड़ा थोड़ा organic matter and soil accumulate होने लग गया. There the bryophytes or the small plants, they start to grow, right? So slowly the abiotic environment become less and less harsh, so it becomes more favorable for the other plant species to take over. So as the changing abiotic factors become less extreme, biotic factors become more prevalent, and adaptations to these are more required for survival. So those who can adapt and perform better, they will replace the earlier species. So abiotic factors means soil quality, right? Basically temperature, water availability, soil quality. Hmm. So these steps continue. So one species will take over another species, so it will replace another species, and this will continue for a certain period of time. It can be decades or it can be over 100 years. Ultimately you will have a stable community, so there will not be further change. So this stable community is called as climax community, because it is in equilibrium with the abiotic factors or the environment. So this remains dominant until an accident happens. Again fire wire कुछ हो गया तो फिर change हो जाएगा. Again the succession will start. Until there is a natural calamity or an accident, this will remain stable. So climax community is a stable community. So ultimately climax community will take over. Now I think you have some idea what is succession, about what is succession. So let us go further deeper into this. प्राइमरी एंड सेकेंडरी सक्सेशन का भी कोई डिफरेंस बता सकते हो तुम? नाउ यू कैन टेल द डिफरेंस. Primary succession is basically where the process begins from the start, from the starting point. There was no community earlier, so it was just a bare rock which got exposed. Now this rock will undergo weathering. Slowly the species composition of the area will change. It may take long period. Ultimately area will be occupied by climax community, which is stable or which is in equilibrium with the environment. So it all starts with your bare rock, right? So lichens, they can tolerate these harsh conditions. So lichens, they will grow on these bare rocks. So you can see here, यहाँ पर yellow दिख रहा है rock के ऊपर. So they grow on bare rock. They help in weathering process. They will break down the rock, and ultimately some amount of soil will be added. So these lichens, they die and they also add organic matter. So slowly the conditions, abiotic factors of the area are becoming less and less harsh. And so again, after that, bryophytes, mosses will take over. So lichens will be replaced by mosses. Sometimes the lichens and the mosses may grow together. Moss is bryophyte. It is a lower plant. They may grow together, but ultimately mosses will replace the lichens. And after that, small herbs, okay, annual plants, they will replace the mosses, which are replaced by grasses and perennial plants, shrubs. Okay, ultimately, so these are all your intermediate stages. ये सब तुम्हारे intermediate stages हैं. Grasses, perennials, and at the end you will have a climax community, which is stable community. So we will see this process in steps, in different steps. Pioneer species का example क्या है, how they modify the environment, we will discuss them in detail. ठीक है? So let us deal with the primary succession. So it begins in a vacant region. That means there was no community prior to this. So just bare rock. There was no community here. So it never had any vegetation of any kind. There was no creature in this area. So just rock, bare rock. And because it is very difficult to survive on the bare rock, so there was no community, no plant or animal species living here. So it is just bare area. So it starts from this point. Okay, so ऐसे areas कैसे आते हैं? So few uncovered or the areas or the rock which is exposed, suppose एक ग्रेनाइट का बहुत बड़ा पत्थर है, so erosion हो गया वहां पर and this granite rock has been exposed, or due to tectonic movement or due to volcanic eruption, lava has flown and this lava is turned into rock. So this is bare rock. Now here the process of succession begins. So as there is no dirt, just bare rock, these stones were separated by microorganisms and disintegrated to form or to frame the soil. So this is cycle of erosion. So basically weathering process हो रहा है. So bare rocks, they are turned into soil. So these rocks, through biological weathering and physical weathering, they will be converted to soil. The soil then turns into groundwork for vegetation. If you have soil, then slowly seeds can germinate and plants can take the nutrients from the soil and they can grow. So rocks से पहले soil बनता है. Rock से soil में convert करने के लिए you require certain organisms like lichens. So lichens are the pioneer species. So they grow on the rocks. The rocks will be broken down into fragments and soil will start to form. This soil will form the base where other plants can grow. So those plants will take over the area later. So soil then turns into groundwork for vegetation. So it for the most part takes a few to 1,000 years for laying out a biotic local area relying on the base and the environment. So it may take around more than 100 years or somewhere between 100 and 1,000 years to develop a stable community ultimately. So it starts from here. So these plants, they help various creatures and progress from primary ecosystem to climax community. Slowly one species will be replaced by another species and ultimately you will have a climax community. Okay, so this can continue, and stable community, once it is formed, it may be again destroyed by some natural disaster. So if it is destroyed by some natural disaster, after that again succession begins. So such kind of succession is called as secondary succession. So in secondary succession, there was a prior community there in the area. There was a prior community. Is what it was destroyed by a fire or some other accident, and now again succession process has begun after the natural disaster. So such kind of succession is called as secondary succession. So there was a community prior to the natural disaster. ओके सो यहाँ पर फायर आ गया और फायर ने सब जला दिया सब कुछ. अब वापस से यहाँ पर सक्सेशन शुरू हो रहा है. अगेन ग्रासेस एंड पेरिनियल्स विल देन shrubs, then ultimately climax community. Okay, so there was a prior community, it got destroyed by a fire or some accident, and again succession process started. So this may take shorter period of time when compared to your प्राइमरी सक्सेशन, क्योंकि प्राइमरी सक्सेशन में वेदरिंग हो रहा है. रॉक्स हैव टू टर्न इनटू सॉइल. इट मे टेक अ लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, सो अराउंड 1,000 years or so. Whereas in secondary succession there was already a soil, there was fire, but there were seeds or the plant species, they were there. So after this fire some may survive. So again it will not take that much time because soil or the base is already prepared here. So the seeds will germinate and this area will again turn into a forest within a short period of time. When compared to your primary succession, secondary succession takes a shorter period of time because soil is already there. There is already soil, seeds are there which can germinate when moisture is available, right? So this will take a shorter period of time to get into your mature forest, right? So it begins in the region that in some way lost every one of the living organic entities that existed there. So due to some accident, fire, all the individuals or the populations or the communities were destroyed. So since some dirt or dredge is available, yani soil available hai yahan par, right? Though there was a fire accident, but soil is there already. So it will take a shorter period of time. So at the point when essential biological systems get cleared out due to fire, it can happen because of woodland fire, overwhelmed lands माने degraded lands. Degraded lands को हम लोग overwhelmed lands बोलते हैं. So degraded land can be due to pollution, due to salt concentration, avalanches, seismic tremors, and because of any other natural calamity. So following such annihilation, इस तरह से जब पूरा कम्युनिटी डिस्ट्रॉय हो जाता है, उसके बाद तुम्हारा जो प्रोसेस शुरू होता है, the course of progression will happen in future from new natural circumstances. So little plants will arise first, then slowly they will be replaced by shrubs and ultimately into a climax community. Right. So at last there will be a climax community, but it may take shorter period of time compared to your primary succession, क्योंकि primary succession में तो rock से शुरू हो रहा है. Weathering process itself take a lot of period of time. Weathering process बहुत time लेता है. So वहां पर it may take thousands of years. Here within few decades again you will have a stable community. So a classic example of secondary succession occurs in oak and hickory forest cleared by wildfire. So wildfire will burn most of the vegetation and those animals which are unable to move, जो भाग सकते हैं, the animals which can move fast, mammals, they can run away. The animals which are very slow, they will be killed, right? Their nutrients, however, are returned to the ground in the form of ash. The remains ash will, so recycling of nutrients will happen. Carbon will be turned into carbon dioxide, but rest of the nutrients will return to the soil. Thus, even when areas are devoid of life due to severe fires, the area will soon be ready for the new life to take place. Because soil is there, nutrients are there, it is just a matter of time when the seeds will germinate because of availability of moisture, and you will see vegetation growing there very quickly. So before the fire, the vegetation was dominated by tall trees with access to major plant energy resource, that is sunlight. But now, अब मरने के बाद, the first plants to grow back are usually annual plants within a few years by quickly growing and spreading grasses and other pioneer species. So in the climax community which got destroyed, it was dominated by plants. I mean, the trees which grew very taller and it harvested much of the light. But after their death, again the pioneer species that starts the community there, it is the grasses or annual plants. Slowly they will be replaced by other plants. Okay. Ultimately again occupying, I mean, the climax community will again occupy hickory and your oak forest. They will occupy the area at the end. Got it? Secondary and primary succession समझ में आ रहा है? So eventually over a period of again 150 years, the forest will reach the equilibrium. So it takes a shorter period of time in secondary succession. Primary succession, it takes a long period of time. Okay, so this equilibrium state which is achieved, it is called as climax community, and it will remain as such until again another disturbance happens. फिर से फिर आग लग जाएगी, तब तक ये stable है. Again some disturbance, if it happens, again succession will start. So that was primary and secondary succession. Now there are two other types also, autogenic and allogenic succession. So autogenic and allogenic succession देख लेते हैं. So autogenic. Okay. So so I said earlier there will be a pioneer community. This pioneer community will bring changes in the abiotic factors. Pioneer community, it is extracting nutrients from the environment, it will bring changes to the abiotic conditions, soil quality and soil properties. And the changes in the abiotic community, that is, soil is a abiotic factor, right? Changes in the abiotic factor. Abiotic factor का एक example क्या? Soil. Now, this change that has come in the abiotic factor, the change in the soil, is because of the initial pioneer species. So, pioneer species has brought changes in the soil. So, now it has become more favorable for another species. B के लिए ज्यादा comfortable हो गया है. Slowly the B, it will outcompete the A species. A will be replaced and this area will be occupied by B species. Now B species is also interacting with the environment, so it is adding its dead leaves और जो भी उसका जो organic matter वो add कर रहा है. It is also changing the environment. It is also bringing changes in the abiotic conditions. So जहां पर changes जो हो रहा है abiotic conditions में, changes are brought by the species or organisms. When the changes in the abiotic conditions happen because of the organisms, it is called as autogenic succession. यहाँ पर organisms change कर रहे हैं condition को. Because of the growth of the organisms, the abiotic conditions are altering. So when course of succession is largely driven or determined by internal coactions, such type of succession is known as autogenic succession. Yani change in both the environment and the community is brought about by the activities of the organisms themselves. यानी organism के खुद के interaction की वजह से changes आ रहे हैं, and these changes are more comfortable or more congenial for other species that will take over the area. So right, so जो environment में change आ रहा है, abiotic conditions में soil में जो change आ रहा है, ये community की वजह से आ रहा है, internal factors, because of the coaction or the effect of communities on the environment, such changes are happening. Community की वजह से ये changes आ रहे हैं, बाहर से कुछ नहीं आ रहा है. Everything is happening because of the communities that are growing and interacting with the abiotic factors. Change in the environment, for example, is brought about by the plant shade or plant input to the soil. Plant अपना organic matter add कर रहा है या फिर plant shade कर रहा है. So this is because of the biotic community, because of the species living there. They are bringing the changes to the environment. This will change the abiotic conditions, which will become more favorable for another species that will later take over the area. Now autogenic succession समझ में आ रहा है. Internal factors, because of the shade given by the pioneer species or because of the organic matter added by the pioneer species, it is bringing changes in the abiotic community. The primary driver of change of autogenic succession comes from within the community. Autogenic succession समझ में आया? So autogenic succession takes a long period of time. बहुत टाइम लेता है. So factors inducing autogenic succession, ये internal factors जो बोल रहे हैं क्या है? So light trapped by the leaves, detritus production यानी organic matter, litter production, uptake of water and nutrients, fixation of nitrogen, right? Microorganisms, they can fix nitrogen. Climate change caused by humans, हम लोग भी तो biotic factor के अंदर ही आते हैं, right? So these factors result in steady ecological change in a specific area of land, which is referred to as succession of dwelling species. So because of the pre-existing plant life, it is considered as secondary succession. So autogenic succession is considered a secondary succession. So because of some natural calamities, again the succession begins. Now allogenic succession. अब देखो यहां पर इंटरनल फैक्टर्स कंट्रोल नहीं कर रहे हैं, एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर कंट्रोल कर रहे हैं. जस्ट अ मिनट. So in allogenic succession, so when the course of succession is controlled by external driving forces, external conditions, the forces beyond the control of indigenous organisms or the changes in the environment are caused by some external factors unaffected by the organisms. यानी organisms जो वहां पर रह रहे हैं उनकी वजह से चेंज नहीं आ रहा है. The change is coming from outside. External factors are bringing the changes. So storm or fire, they are bringing such changes. Internal organisms, they are not causing the change, as in case of autogenic succession. So autogenic succession mein the community which is living there, either they are adding organic matter bringing change in the soil conditions, or they are creating shade bringing changes to the conditions. Right here external conditions are affecting the environment, not the organisms themselves. So external यानी बाहर से फायर हो गया, स्टॉर्म हो गया, they affect the conditions. So allogenic succession happens on a time scale that corresponds or is proportional to the disturbance time scale. तो जितना टाइम लगता है डिस्टर्ब होने के लिए उसके ऊपर डिपेंड करता है. Right. So climate change induced allogenic succession can take thousands of years. Whereas succession of phytoplankton populations in freshwater lakes is caused by the seasonal changes in the temperature and light intensity. तो जो यहाँ पे देखो एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर क्या है, लाइट. सीजनली इट विल चेंज, लाइट इंटेंसिटी और जो टेम्परेचर है वो सीजन पे डिपेंड करता है. सो सक्सेशन यहाँ पर जो है जो वो एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स लाइक लाइट एंड टेम्परेचर पे डिपेंडेंट है. दिस में टेक ए शॉर्टर पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, या जो क्लाइमेट चेंज की वजह से जो चेंजेस आ रहे हैं इट में टेक ए लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. तो टाइम में वेरी, it depends upon the disturbance scale. So allogenic factors, so changes which are brought are by the external factors like flood, drought, volcanic eruption, earthquakes, meteorite strike. So these are external factors. The organisms which are living there, they don't have any influence. Outside factors are influencing the environment there. So such changes will lead to succession. So other species will occupy the area. So जो change आ रहा है ना environment में, so this change in the environment of the area is becoming more favorable for another species. Right? So यहाँ पर A species था, लेकिन जो environment है, now it has becoming more favorable for B. ये जो change है ना, this change that has happened in the abiotic environment, which is not very favorable for A anymore, but favorable for B. B के लिए अब फेवरेबल हो गया है, A के लिए फेवरेबल नहीं है. ये जो चेंज आया है ना, either this is because of internal factors or it is because of external factors. तो सक्सेशन तभी होगा ना, सो वन अदर स्पीशीज विल ऑक्यूपाई द एरिया. सो अगर बी के लिए ज्यादा फेवरेबल हो गया है तो बी विल ऑक्यूपाई, ए विल बी रिप्लेस्ड. सो जो एक ऑर्गेनिज्म के लिए अनफेवरेबल है और दूसरे ऑर्गेनिज्म के लिए जो फेवरेबल है, ये जो चेंज है ना फ्रॉम अनफेवरेबल टू फेवरेबल, द चेंज whether it is brought by the internal factors, yani organisms which are growing, they are themselves responsible for the change, then it is autogenic succession. If external factors are changing the conditions which becomes more favorable for another species, then it is called as allogenic succession. Now is it clear? इतना याद रखना, allogenic, autogenic. Then we have autotrophic succession and heterotrophic succession. Again, these are just terms. We need to just, if you understand these terms, in the future, whenever you go through it or whenever you use these terms, okay, so first of all you have a good understanding what does they mean. बहुत बार हम लोग properly समझे बिना words को use करते हैं, but so you need to understand these different types of succession before we move on to the different stages. हम लोग देखेंगे, so we'll go into xerarch succession and hierarch succession. We'll see how succession happens in different stages. We'll see those stages. So before that, we need to be clear about these terms, right? Autotrophic succession. Now, autotrophic means autotroph. Name में ही है. So, initially, if the number of plants or the plant community is larger in number, then it is called as autotrophic succession. So autotrophic succession is defined as a process in which the number of green plants is initially substantially greater than the number of animals. Autotrophs are greater in number than heterotrophs, initial stages. Then it is called as autotrophic succession. So a medium which is rich in inorganic compounds such as, अगर soil अगर अच्छे से है already, so already developed soil hai, so in a medium which is rich in inorganic compounds, such succession occurs. So green plants will be able to take up these inorganic nutrients. Autotrophic succession includes both primary and secondary succession which are found throughout the nature. So autotrophic में दोनों primary and succession secondary दोनों type के successions included है. Heterotrophic का मतलब क्या है? Hetero means again plants, they are not great in number in the initial stages. Initial stages में plants का number ज्यादा नहीं है. Heterotrophic जो group है उनका number ज्यादा है. So early dominance of heterotrophy is the character of this type of succession. So in heterotrophic succession, population of heterotrophic organisms such as bacteria, actinomycetes, fungus, they are present in great abundance in the early stages. Plants का number ज्यादा नहीं होता है, इनका number ज्यादा है early stages में. Such succession begins in medium rich in organic matter. Autotrophic succession मीडियम विच इज रिच इन इनऑर्गेनिक मैटर, क्योंकि प्लांट्स तो न्यूट्रिएंट्स इनऑर्गेनिक फॉर्म में ही एब्जॉर्ब करते हैं. याद रखना, प्लांट्स टेक न्यूट्रिएंट्स. अब न्यूट्रिएंट्स जब मैं बोल रहा हूं तो एलिमेंट्स, एसेंशियल न्यूट्रिएंट्स की बात कर रहा हूं, ओनली इन इनऑर्गेनिक फॉर्म. याद रखना. So nitrogen they take up in the form of nitrates. Phosphorus orthophosphate के फॉर्म में लेते हैं. पोटेशियम आयन के फॉर्म में NPK. कैल्शियम, मैग्नीशियम, सल्फर. सो ये प्राइमरी एंड सेकेंडरी न्यूट्रिएंट्स हैं. माइक्रो न्यूट्रिएंट्स भी हैं. सो दे ओनली एब्जॉर्ब इन इनऑर्गेनिक फॉर्म. सो जो भी सॉइल में ऑर्गेनिक मैटर डाल रहे हो तो ये ऑर्गेनिक मैटर डिकम्पोजिशन प्रोसेस के थ्रू ऑर्गेनिक टू इनऑर्गेनिक फॉर्म में कन्वर्ट हो. तो इस प्रोसेस को हम लोग बोलते हैं मिनरलाइजेशन. सो ऑर्गेनिक मैटर वॉट एवर यू एड टू द सॉइल, प्लांट्स को नहीं पता है कि जो न्यूट्रिएंट्स आ रहा है वो फर्टिलाइजर से आ रहा है या ऑर्गेनिक मैटर से आ रहा है. प्लांट्स हैव नो आइडिया. उनको तो इनऑर्गेनिक फॉर्म में ही एब्जॉर्ब करते हैं. सो ये इनऑर्गेनिक न्यूट्रिएंट फर्टिलाइजर से आ रहा है या ऑर्गेनिक मैटर डिकम्पोज होके आ रहा है, इट डजंट मैटर टू देम, दे विल एब्जॉर्ब ओनली इन इनऑर्गेनिक फॉर्म, राइट. सो यहाँ पे देखो, इन ऑटोट्रॉफिक सक्सेशन it begins the medium which is rich in inorganic compounds, that means plant absorbable form. So nutrients are in inorganic form, there the plants can readily absorb the nutrients and grow. In heterotrophic succession, heterotrophs are larger in number, so heterotrophs they cannot synthesize their own food. So soil mein jo heterotrophs hain, fungi, bacteria, actinomycetes, they have to depend upon organic matter, organic matter pe depend karte hain. That is why biofertilizers, so biofertilizers are microorganisms, right? You cannot use biofertilizers in dryland areas. Dryland area, dryland agriculture में organic matter नहीं होता है ज़्यादा soil, so you have to add organic matter to use biofertilizers. So अगर effectively use करना है biofertilizers को, you have to add lot of organic matter to the soil. So that is one of the limitation why we are not able to promote biofertilizers to that an extent is 50% एरिया हमारा ड्राईलैंड एग्रीकल्चर है अभी भी, तो ऑर्गेनिक मैटर तो होगा नहीं वहां पर ज्यादा. ओनली वन सीजन यू कैन ग्रो क्रॉप, दैट टू व्हेन साउथ वेस्ट मानसून इज देयर, rest of the year it will be fallow because moisture is not available, right? So organic matter levels are very low, so if you don't have organic matter levels, biofertilizers you cannot use. So heterotrophic succession, it is characterized by the environment where medium is rich in organic मैटर. तो यहाँ ऑर्गेनिक, क्योंकि फंगस क्या ऑर्गेनिक मैटर को खाएगा, डिकम्पोज करेगा ऑर्गेनिक मैटर को, इट विल एक्सट्रैक्ट द न्यूट्रिएंट्स ड्यूरिंग द डिकम्पोजिशन प्रोसेस. गॉट इट? सो दे कंज्यूम द डेड ऑर्गेनिक मैटर फॉर एनर्जी and ultimately they will help in release of nutrients. Some of the nutrients will be released, they will also take up some of the nutrients. So bacteria ये भी nitrates absorb करता है because they also need to synthesize amino acids, they also require enzymes, so they also absorb certain nutrients. You understood this heterotrophic succession, autotrophic succession? Now at least let us cover the stages part. So what are the different stages in succession? So hierarch and xerarch we'll see later. पहले तो सक्सेशन में कौन से स्टेजेस हैं, व्हाट आर द डिफरेंट स्टेजेस इन सक्सेशन, लेट अस डिस्कस दैट फर्स्ट. सबसे पहला न्यूडेशन, फर्स्ट स्टेज इज न्यूडेशन. Okay, so this is basically bare area with no life. So it can be rock surface. Okay, so recently there was a volcanic eruption, the lava, it solidified into rock. Now there is no life here, bare rock. Or there was a community but it got destroyed due to forest fire or some other natural calamity. So development of a bare area without any life form, तो ये beginning है, starting stage है. There is a nude area, there is no life. The area may develop due to several causes such as landslide, erosion, or some other calamity, or it is bare rock where the succession will start after the lava has solidified, so it has turned into rock. So life will start slowly on this bare rock. So nudation pehla step hai. So nudation, that means absence of any life. It may be caused by topographic factors, that is soil erosion, landslide, volcanic activity, earthquakes. Any of this may cause nudation or removal of life. It can be climatic, glaciers, dry periods, hailstorms, frost, fire, that can also wipe out the community, or biotic factors because of destruction of forest due to industrialization, agriculture expansion, disease due to fungi and bacteria. the community might be wiped out, and now it is empty. Now the succession will begin in this area. So nudation or absence of any life form, तो वहां से शुरू होता है. First step is nudation. This can be because of several reasons. Now second, a pioneer community will come and occupy this area. So जो starting community है, pioneer community will occupy this area. So तुम्हारा अगर प्राइमरी सक्सेशन है तो लाइचेंस विल ऑक्यूपाई द एरिया. सक्सेसफुल एस्टैब्लिशमेंट ऑफ ए स्पीशीज इन ए बेयर एरिया इज कॉल्ड एज इन्वेजन. सो न्यूडेशन हो गया. सेकंड स्टेप इज इन्वेजन. सो ए पायनियर स्पीशीज विल कम हियर एंड ऑक्यूपाई. अब ये जो पायनियर स्पीशीज है लाइचन, सो लाइचन्स में दे हैव सोरिडिया. So these are basically spore-like structures which have algal spore and hypha covering the algal spore. So it is a unit which composed of both algae and fungi. So these spores, they may occupy an area. It may be transported due to wind or water and occupy this nude area. So successful establishment of a species in a bare area is called as invasion. So species reaches this new area or the new site from other areas. हवा से, पानी से, एनिमल से, कैसे भी आ सकता है. Now let us see in the invasion you have different stages. तो पहला जो stage है that is migration. It has to travel, it has to migrate, disperse from one area, right? So seeds, spores and other propagules of the species reaches the bare area. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल लाइचन्स में सोरिडिया है, इट विल रीच थ्रू एयर और वाटर और सम अदर एजेंसी. देन इन्वेजन में सेकंड स्टेप, फर्स्ट स्टेप तो माइग्रेशन है, सेकंड इज एस्टैब्लिशमेंट. एक्सेस बोलते हैं इसको, एस्टैब्लिशमेंट. सो आफ्टर रीचिंग द एरिया, द प्रोसेस ऑफ सक्सेसफुल एस्टैब्लिशमेंट ऑफ द स्पीशीज begins because it will adjust to the abiotic condition. So the species that has entered this area, it will adjust to the conditions and it will establish itself. So success of a plant depends upon the climatic or soil conditions. Edaphic mane soil conditions. If in plants after migration, seeds or propagules they germinate, seedlings they will grow and adults they will grow and they will start to reproduce. Okay, so ऐसा नहीं है कि कोई भी species यहाँ पर adapt कर सकता है. Only a few species they can do this. So only a few of them can do this under primitive harsh conditions, and thus most of them they will disappear. Even when the species they are reproducing, so the population will not be very high because the conditions are not very favorable to support large populations. अभी तो पत्थर है, bare rock है, soil is just beginning to form. So this bare rock is undergoing weathering and slowly the soil formation takes place. So ये बहुत slow process है. This area it cannot support large populations of the species. So only few of them will be able to survive. Population will not drastically increase. Okay. So slowly the species will establish, but population will not be that much. Then C, aggregation, third step. So as a result of reproduction, the individuals of one species they will slowly increase in number and they grow very close together. So to जैसे हमने देखा था, to avoid cold winds or they desiccation, they will grow close together. So that because the wind speed is very high, there is no vegetation here. तो हवा बहुत तेज चलती है. So the cold and hot winds they can harm the individual. So they grow close together to avoid penetration of the wind. Then excesses establishment हो गया, aggregation हो गया. Now competition will start. Population is slowly increasing. Population धीरे धीरे increase हो रहा है. Conditions are becoming slowly more and more favorable. So now competition will be there because population is increasing. So struggle for existence between two or more individuals growing in an area, they will start. अब देखो एक ही स्पीशीज है या फिर एक से ज्यादा स्पीशीज भी हो सकते हैं. सो लाइचन्स कैन बी ऑफ ओनली वन टाइप और देयर आर 2 to 3 टाइप्स ऑफ लाइचन्स दे कैन एस्टैब्लिश एट वंस. 2-3 स्पीशीज एक साथ भी एस्टैब्लिश हो सकते हैं. सो इफ इट इज विद इन द सेम स्पीशीज competition, it is called as intraspecific. If it is between two species, it is called as interspecific. So struggle is usually between two individuals of same kind that have same demands for nutrients, for water, for space. So it is between two species, it is called as interspecific. If it is between the same species, it is called as intraspecific. Competition शुरू हो गया. So as a result of competition, weak individuals are eliminated and the stronger ones are retained. अब जो वीक इंडिविजुअल्स जो मर गए हैं उनके डेड बॉडीज जो हैं वो ऑर्गेनिक मैटर ऐड करेंगे. लाइचन ही है सपोज, डेड लाइचन ऑर्गेनिक मैटर है, इट विल ऐड टू द ऑर्गेनिक मैटर. तो स्लोली द अमाउंट ऑफ ऑर्गेनिक मैटर एंड द सॉइल विल इंक्रीज. तो धीरे धीरे वहां पर ह्यूमस एक्यूमुलेट होगा एंड सॉइल विल बिगिन टू फॉर्म. ओके, so we have seen 2 steps: nudation, then invasion. Pioneer species will come and it will occupy the space. It will slowly modify. कैसे modify कर रहा है? Right, population increase हुआ, struggle for existence. Some will die if there are 2 to 3 species of lichens, more than 3 species of lichens. Some they may outcompete others. So जो weak हैं वो मर जाएंगे. Their dead body will add organic matter. Slowly soil will begin to form. So slowly you can see the environment is changing. Now third is reaction. This is the most important stage in succession. So देखो environment modify हो रहा है उस एरिया का. कैसे? Autogenic, allogenic succession बताया था. If the factors are internal, so the organisms they die and their dead body will add to the organic matter, humus will accumulate, slowly the soil formation is taking place. Internal factors, if they are responsible, it is called as autogenic succession. So see, environment is slowly changing due to autogenic or allogenic succession. कोई भी हो सकता है reason, but environment is slowly changing. The mechanism of modification of the environment through the influence of living organism on it is known as reaction. So see, slowly the abiotic conditions are altering because of the species itself. जो वहां पर पाइनियर स्पीशीज है उसकी वजह से ही एनवायरनमेंट में चेंजेस आ रहे हैं. एज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ द रिएक्शंस, चेंजेस टेक्स प्लेस इन द सॉइल, वाटर, लाइट कंडीशंस, टेम्परेचर्स ऑफ द एरिया. तो उस एरिया में जो भी एबायोटिक फैक्टर्स है वो स्लोली मॉडिफाई हो रहे हैं. So for example, plants change the structure and texture of soil in course of time by adding humus or organic matter. So slowly soil का pH change होता है, soil का structure and texture change हो रहा है. So this is called as reaction. Now ultimately what will happen? All these changes, they make the environment more favorable for another species. दूसरे species के लिए ज्यादा favorable बन जाता है environment. And when the other species comes, this original species may remain here for some period of time, but ultimately this will dominate. The new species, it will overshade the earlier species or it will outcompete for nutrients, ultimately eliminating the earlier species. Now B will become dominant. अब ये जो है B, ये abiotic environment के साथ interact कर रहा है. Even they will die, they will add organic matter. Slowly the soil will start to form. Conditions are slowly again changing, inviting. So C आके एरिया को ऑक्यूपाई कर लेता. अब C कहां से आ रहा है? Again seeds, by birds dropping the seeds, और animals के फर पे अटैच हो सकते हैं seeds, or they are carried by wind. By some agency they are brought to the area and they will now dominate because conditions are more favorable for C than B. Are you getting? इस तरह से. So A will be replaced by B. B will be replaced by C, and so on ultimately until you will have a mature community, that is a climax community. जब तक तुमको एक climax community नहीं आता, which is stable community, because it is in equilibrium with the environment. No further changes will happen until some accident happens. फिर आग लग जाए या फिर कुछ हो जाए, तब तक change नहीं आएगा. So this is the final stage where community of organisms becomes more or less stable. It is in equilibrium with the climate to sustain itself for a longer period of time until some accident again happens. So इसको stable community को हम लोग बोलते हैं climax community. So for example, a grassland or a woodland or coral reef, they are your climax community. All right, you got it. So these are the different stages. So okay, our थोड़ा सा बचा हुआ है. So again we have only 10 minutes. So 10 minutes में तो होगा नहीं, एक दो स्लाइड में ही फिर बीच में रोकना पड़ेगा. So I don't want to start it now because we have only 10 minutes. So let us do it tomorrow. कल कर लेते हैं, ठीक है? Saturday. Tomorrow we'll have class because एक दिन छुट्टी आ गया ना क्रिसमस का. So tomorrow we'll do it. So tomorrow we'll have class for 1.5 hour. Okay. So we'll do these two and carbon and nitrogen cycle. We'll discuss those two cycles. So 1.5 hour maximum. So tomorrow we'll have class. Then again we'll have Sunday. छुट्टी है ना, तो इस मंथ में बहुत छुट्टी है, फिर न्यू ईयर का छुट्टी है. So let us have class tomorrow. So we'll discuss rest of the succession and carbon and nitrogen cycles tomorrow. All right. So thank you.